So, hi, welcome to Apostate Alex. We have the Degraded Daughters here today who have just launched a new channel on SPTV. So welcome, firstly, to SPTV, to the both of you.
Thank you.
How are you finding it so far?
Fun.
Yeah.
Ish. Busy, fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's super exciting hearing back from everybody and that we're not as crazy as we were told we were when we were leaving, and that we have all this support.
Yeah. That's a nice part of it.
Yeah, that's the one thing that surprised me most about SPTV, or whatever you want to call it, is like Scientology paints such a picture that the outside world, all these like nasty SPs are horrible people and all they want to do is ruin your life. And actually, when you get out there, there's nothing but love and support in the comments. Like everyone is being so supportive and nice. The majority of viewers, I find, are not even former Scientologists. They are just people who are interested in it. And they are just so kind and welcoming. And like anytime someone joins SPTV or I have a new guest on, like there's just hundreds of comments, just people saying, I'm just commenting for the algorithm because I know it helps. And I'm like, it's awesome. Like it's such a nice little community.
It's pretty surprising as someone who spent their life in it, how much, I mean, honestly, it was like our little secret and we hid it for so long. And the fact that everyone has done so much work speaking out so far, and the aftermath was created and Going Clear, all the incredible documentaries, all the executives who have spoken out have created a safer environment for us to be honest. And it's just cool that people care, like you said, who were never involved.
Yeah, no reason to care, and they do, and that's really been super humbling and nice to have a nice cushion to fall into.
The WOG world ain't so bad after all.
It's true. One thing that's happened recently, I don't know if you guys saw, but the big May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and so I did a bit of a push and I put a video up at the beginning of the month saying if I hit 5,000 subscribers this month, I'll donate $100 to the Aftermath Foundation, which isn't tons of money, but it's a chunk and it's something. And what I didn't expect was I've had, as of today, 4 viewers offer to match the donation. My $100 donation, if I reach the target, is going to be $500.
$500.
Congratulations! That's awesome.
Hopefully I'll make the goal. I'm at like 4,700, so close. I think I will do it. But I think it's just like it's such a nice way of sharing the community and sharing stories and just the kindness and the generosity of the people watching. Like I didn't ask people to do that. It shocked me. I was like, wait, what? You want to contribute to? Like, and then suddenly it's $500. It's like, whoa.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's completely opposite to what Scientology make you believe.
Yeah. But it's nice, isn't it? That's what I'm doing for my birthday month on my little fundraiser on Facebook is for the aftermath. And I did it last year. And then I donated 500 almost 2 years ago. How I initially got in trouble. By, ripping off the Band-Aid by doing that and posting about it. So
the aftermath, right?
So to the aftermath. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So I love that that's there for some people that are aren't in, have never been in. People can all donate and you can sign up and volunteer, which is also cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And like the number of volunteers, I don't know how many volunteers there are, but I think Aaron Smith-Levin, Claire and Mark Headley they've all said there are hundreds, if not thousands of volunteers in pretty much every country on earth, which is like just incredible. Yeah. It just shows how genuinely nice most people are.
Yeah.
I will provide a aspect as somebody who was under the radar for 7 years or whatever, that it's even scary to call the aftermath. You think that you're going to get in trouble. So like sometimes those resources, although people are so nice and offering them, like it's actually too scary to reach out because you're afraid that you're going to lose your family member. So channels like yours and ours are accessible and undercover, and we can talk directly to people and they don't have to risk anything. Because I watched YouTube forever and that was like the most educational way to figure yourself out. So I'm stoked that we have help on all accounts.
all aspects.
Yeah, absolutely. I was watching YouTube videos for ages before I kind of decided to reach out to anyone. And I remember I reached out to Chris Shelton and I was like, you know, I've been watching your videos and I don't know why, I just kind of connected with his channel in some way. And I didn't ask to be on his channel. I kind of said, I feel like I just need to speak to another former Scientologist because I've never actually spoken to a former Scientologist before. And he was like so gracious and kind of like, yeah, absolutely. Like, and he jumped on a Zoom call with me for an hour or 2 hours or something like that. And then I went away and like, it felt like such a weight lifted off my shoulders speaking to someone who understands. But just doing that in itself was a big step, even though I'd been out for several years before I did start speaking out. There's like an internal guilt almost of like, I didn't consider myself a Scientologist at that point. I was like out, but I just I wasn't thinking about it. So I just kind of, I realized, I don't know if you did this, but whenever someone talked about the Xenu story, right, I would always skip it. Not because I haven't heard it, but because it made me feel a bit uncomfortable and I have no idea why. And my therapist once said, next time you come across it, just watch it and see how it makes you feel. Right. And I was like, okay, cool. And I did it and I was like, didn't make me feel anyway. Like it's completely fine. But just these little things that you pick up over time, right?
Yeah, we're still
I had to watch South Park as an adult and find the comedy because that was like so triggering in junior high, having everybody make jokes and stuff. But yeah, and then it's taken a long time to want to speak out. So I lost a lot before I decided to talk, which is so weird. Like for years, walked around with like, oh yeah, my parents are disconnected, blah, blah, blah. Everyone knew this. Chris knew this. Aaron knew this. Like we've become homies, but it's just, you risk a little bit. And you also, it's a personal story that you're putting out there. And you pretty much know that, I mean, there's no chance your parents are going to call you out of the blue when you're on SPTV, right? So it's a big move, and the harassment and all, you have to be prepared to deal with whatever comes your way, you know? And I love that it seems like a lot of people who got out kind of started waking up when I did close to 10 years ago are now talking and launching their stories because it takes that long.
Yeah. I mean, I was kicked out in, I think it would have been January 2014 or February 2014 that I got my PTS type D declare. And then I was doing extension courses and stuff, and I signed my SEAL contract, and I was trying to get back in good graces of the church, but just kind of over time, not being in that environment every day, I just kind of, and I was 18, so I was kind of, you know, drifting away and just not in like, and just kind of went my own way about life, and probably stopped considering myself Scientologist around 2016, 2017, something like that, because I just kind of wasn't, I was doing other things, I was at university and all that, and didn't really think about it. And then 6 years afterwards is when I realized it was still affecting me. And now it's like, I've been on YouTube for like a couple of months, so 3 months, something like that. And so
I didn't realize you hadn't been on here longer. I thought you were here for a lot longer because you've been doing so many videos. And then I looked, I'm like 6 months or 4 months or something.
February. I joined in February. Wow. So my first venture into the world of YouTube was speaking to Chris Shelton in December of 2022. And then I kind of took some time over it, and I kind of wanted to do something, maybe start sharing my story or whatever. But I kind of wanted to really make high quality, like Netflix style documentary stuff, which I can do, but it takes a lot of time. And I realized that I was putting it off because I wanted it. And I was like, look, actually, no, let's just jump the gun. It's better to get something out there and then focus on the quality later.
Honestly, we're such perfectionists coming from a background of being spot checked and everything. So like, I think it stops a lot of people. We're on the exact same tip. We're like, look, we sat here, we want to do all these things, we have to do it. And then we're like, no, we're going to learn as we go. We're going to be supported, and let's just do it. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's in a weird way, like, you know, for me joining staff in Scientology, it was like, this is the best way to help people, right? It's through Scientology. And in a way, like, they make it seem like that's your purpose in life. And it kind of is. Like, I still, let's not get into the rabbit hole of life purposes and stuff, but in a way, what I'm doing now, right, and what you're doing, sharing your stories on YouTube, you're helping people, and it takes like very minimal effort. All you have to do is like press a button on your computer and just talk.
Yeah.
And you may not even see the people or hear from them because people will be watching videos and they'll never comment. But just hearing other people's experiences, helps them, right? And it's just, that's what drives me now, is knowing
Alex, I'm a certified peer support specialist and I work in mental health now. I have gone and spent a lot of time in my personal psyche trying to figure out if I'm just doing this because I signed a Sea Org contract at 12 to save the planet, or if I just like it. And it's like, I just like it at this point, and it's hard sometimes doing this kind of stuff, but like, it's literally so important. And like Mental Health Awareness Month, no one talks about mental health. I mean, they're really starting to, but to take it seriously as something it's so important. So like, we can all help. Like you said, this is a super easy way to just hopefully reach people. And like, we're truly doing it out of the goodness of our hearts, not because we're like, I mean, obviously we're all risking a lot actually by doing it. So there's no reward. I hate when they would talk about Leah when I was still in, like, she was trying to make money off of her story. Like, no, everyone knows Leah's probably lost a lot from speaking out and like lost a lot of opportunities. So that's just a crazy tagline they try to throw on people. I still think like that sometimes, and I need to let it go about us. Like, I'm like, oh, I don't want to be sensational because I don't want anybody to judge us as being, and it's like, no, I keep telling Elysia, we have to remind ourselves they're 0.001 of the community, and we have a whole world out there. So we got to let go of those judgments and stuff.
It's true. It's hard. It's ingrained in us, especially us born and raised in this.
Yeah. It's so important to do what you can, and everyone can help in their own different ways, and for us having Scientology stories, we can help by sharing our stories, and people who aren't former Scientologists can help just by watching videos, right? And commenting and sharing and subscribing and stuff like that pushes the video out to more people, right? That's why I did the Mental Health Awareness Month challenge, is because not because I want to, obviously it's great to gain subscribers and all of that, but that's not why I'm doing it. I'm doing this because the more people that engage with my video, the more YouTube pushes it out to other people, which means the more likelihood someone is going to see it and be helped by it. Right. And that's what drives, I think, all of us on SBTV is trying to help people and just raise awareness of our own stories and experiences.
And when you were talking about, speaking out and stuff, I was realizing it takes so long. And this goes hand in hand with the isolation you feel when you leave. But it takes so long to learn how to express yourself using words that you weren't taught. Like, I couldn't say, like, I'm feeling depressed. Depressed is a not okay word in Scientology. I was never allowed to say that. I couldn't say I'm having anxiety. Like, so to be able to have that vocabulary even now to speak is freeing. And it's dangerous when you feel so isolated, like no one can understand your experience. So hopefully people can tune in and not feel so isolated.
Yeah, 100%. I think people... This is what I've told this story quite a lot, so I'm not going to regurgitate it. But I went to therapy for something completely separate, not related to do with Scientology, and that's when I realized it was still affecting me, because it was to do with like feeling emotions in the room to be able to help, like to work on them. And it wasn't that I was like pushing an emotion, like feeling it and going, oh, I've got to suppress that and not feel it. I wasn't even recognizing that I like was having an emotion, like a feeling. Like that's how deep Scientology goes. It's so like mind boggling to like go on.
I can't wait to talk very deeply about disassociation because it just encourages it from the second you start TRs. So it's a really real thing that happens, and like
it's a lot to unpack. It takes a long time.
It's hard to like,
if you're like working on it, you're just still like, some days you're just like, how do I how do I
mean, you don't even
how do
think
I
of
say
yourself
it
as
with,
your meat body. Like when you don't
meat
think of
bodies?
yourself as your meat body, there's a
Right.
serious problem because you can't like be in it and breathe and know what you're feeling and like pick the right foods and stuff. Like that's majorly not cool.
Basic ways to take care of yourself are very hard. Yeah. I've noticed that with a lot of people, especially older people that maybe stayed in Sea Org and stuff like that for a long time, that never had to make those life choices and decisions. Oof.
It's probably hard.
It's hard. It's very hard. And choices are overwhelming when you're not learning, you're not used to making choices. So it's like if you give them 5 things, it's like, ugh.
PTSD too. Like you're just, when we get out, there's all these choices and there's no black and white. Everything's like, you just do what you want. And you're like, wait, what? I need
what
structure.
do I want? Who am I?
Yeah. Like it's a lot to deal with.
I was talking to, first of all, sorry about this lighting situation. It's suddenly decided to be really sunny here in London.
No, you're okay.
Nice.
And the window's in like the wrong place. So it's kind of making me look weird. But it's too bright to like have any proper, like my light is on, but it's not doing anything. Anyway, I was speaking to Doug Kramer from Days But Not Confused about this, about, I can't remember if it was on a live stream or whether it was a private call, but I was on a plane in September to America. I went to go visit some friends in Atlanta, and they were coming along with the cart, and they were like, do you want the chicken or the beef, like, or the fish or whatever, like the 3 options.
Yeah.
I couldn't for the life of me decide what I wanted, because I would have been absolutely fine with any of them, right? Because they all seemed quite nice. But like, I don't know if you guys have experienced this, but I like massively overthink everything.
Overthink and panic attacks.
This is how deep it went, right? I was like, okay, so imagine I'm having the chicken. How does that feel in my mouth? How does that taste? Okay, yeah, I feel kind of happy with the chicken. Okay, right, now imagine I pick the beet, right, to try and figure out which one I'm going to be most disappointed with, so that then I can figure out which one I want. And the poor like air hostess was like, can you please just pick one? And I was like, I don't care, just give me something. But like, just simple decisions
they call it choice paralysis. And since we're in this age of technology, we have so many choices. So on top of being former cult members, we're also dealing with the rest of the world's dealing with choice paralysis, where there's like 18 grocery stores to order from and like 18 brands of everything. Like, am I making the wrong choice? And then we end up doing nothing, and it sucks. You know?
What do you want for dinner? I don't know.
Yeah, I guess
you sit there until you're like, oh, I'm so tired.
It's like Netflix, like trying to scroll Netflix for 5 hours to figure out what you want to watch. When back in the day, we would have watched whatever was playing, right? Like,
yeah. Good old Friends DVD box set.
Yeah. Seinfeld. I still watch Seinfeld every night. It's an easy choice.
It's a good one.
Before we go down too much of a rabbit hole, I feel like we haven't done introductions, right? So obviously, Vanessa, you mentioned that you've gone to the dark side, right? We know that you're filming in the psychology world, and obviously I've watched your videos, but for people who are watching this channel and maybe don't know who you are, do you guys want to give maybe a brief background of who you are, like where you've come from and why you're now on YouTube?
Sure. I will start. I was born in Scientology silently at home, went through all different Scientology processes starting at about 5, always went to Scientology applied scholastic schools, but was raised between San Diego and Los Angeles. We moved to Hollywood when I was 7 or something, and I grew up across the street from Celebrity Center, and grew up in the LA area among second-gen Scientologists, which is a very interesting experience growing up in Hollywood, but inside of a bizarre small bubble of Scientologists who you trust. And then
your parents weren't in the Sea Org or anything, were they? They were just Scientology public, right?
Elysia and I are both public, so it was a kind of interesting, different viewpoint, we think, because there's not too many public channels, I guess, and it's very, very different from when you're in the Sea Org or a Sea Org kid. Although a lot of my friends grew up, their parents were in the Sea Org and then came out or whatever. But my dad was on staff a long time before I was born. So he kind of had that mentality. And, you know, there's the LSD rule as well about the Sea Org. So I think a lot of people's parents were disqualified for being fun hippies. But,
which is kind of funny when you think about, when you go back to the origins of Scientology and how it was such a big like hippie movement at the beginning, and that's where it kind of came from.
100%. It's so weird that they're so drug free, but obviously LRH wasn't. So I unfortunately like kind of stopped going to I never went to normal school, but I stopped going to school at like 15 or 16. I signed up for Harvard College of Administration, and took a unfortunately huge loan out at that point. I could never get through it because it was just not making sense in the real world. It was like literally written documents in the 60s about how to file bills and stuff. And this is, you know, 2005. It was completely unhelpful. I ended up dropping out, and then I had like this loan that chased me through my 20s. I ended up figuring out like I got to make a lot of money to pay this off and to support myself and my dogs. I've always loved dogs, just like Elysia. We bond on being foster moms. Both of us are to this day. But I started bartending, and that gave me a bit of a glimpse into the outside world. And I started seeing like, I was just seeing mostly people who were at the bar, but there were things I was starting to observe about the outside world. It wasn't so bad. Actually, maybe these people are kind of nice. And I got some life experience. I ironically, and I do want to tell you about this, watched the same John Sweeney video you did. And guess what? It made me have the opposite effect. And I was like, first of all, Mike Rinder, what the fuck happened to you? Because we saw him on stage as a kid. And so to see him looking like that after just getting out of the hole, whoa. But that was one of the first things I saw. And I remember thinking, God, why are they harassing this man? And then also, holy shit, this is going to get out to the public. And they just broke this reporter in such a short amount of time. It really made me realize how powerful they are, because they've been doing that shit to us our whole life. And we know how powerful they are. And so the fact that we watched this man crumble in front of us, I was like, they would do that. And that's like scary, you know? And that kind of started me looking at things and all that.
I think it's interesting because I didn't grow up in Scientology, so I had no awareness of like the tactics or whatever until I watched this documentary. So I saw the same thing that you did, and I kind of thought, you know, I've spoken before about like, well, obviously there's a disagreement here. They're probably trying to make John Sweeney come across in a really bad way, but it's also like, well, there must be they're really passionate about what they're doing, because they are really ferociously going after this guy. They are like viciously protecting their faith. So they're like, they really believe in this. And that's what interested me, was like, firstly, how someone can believe in something like that to that level of like defense mechanisms and stuff. But also like, they're clearly doing something that works, right? Because they've managed to get an effect on this guy on camera. Like, they've managed to get what they want. And that's not necessarily a good thing. I'm not saying I watch that and go, I want to know how to make someone have that reaction. Like, but like, they obviously know how to do what they want to do and have an effect. And you know, so that was kind of interesting to me. Not that I wanted to do the same thing, but I wanted to understand how. Like, how does that happen?
You want those powers?
Not necessarily want the powers, but just like, I want to understand how like you can do that, because John Sweeney is a reporter, very well respected. Like, he's never broken down like that before. What did they do? And that's what interests me.
Now you know.
I know.
Unfortunately. But I did empathize with him, because I felt the similar gaslighting.
Right.
I felt his emotion when I watched that video, and I was like, "Ooh, that's not good. Let me start, digging a little deeper or whatever." And then people were aware that I was not super stoked on Scientology, so they kind of wouldn't talk to me too much about it. They'd try to get me in, but I was just playing like the game, of like, I'm not gonna speak out. It's fine. I wasn't looking into my background. I think it takes a lot of time to just get away from it, and you don't want to deal with it, and then you kind of want to deal with it, or you don't. It's fine. But like at a certain point, numerous people around me started having very bad stress-related illnesses, and I myself started feeling like I was starting to break down and like not mentally well. So I went and I enrolled at Los Angeles City College, which is just a mile from Big Blue. But I had made it, like, I grew up in Hollywood, and they're not going to take my city from me. And that's something that I've been very clear about from day one. So I'm going to go down the street and go to school, and I'm going to take my psych classes there. And it was the best experience for going through trying to figure out what was going on with me and learning some concepts and like getting support from the outside world. Even just having that structure there that was big enough to support me or like take care of me, the college and the professors. If the church came on campus, guess what? Security tells them to go away. So I felt safe on campus. I would walk around with my headphones on and read my books, and that was where I felt safe because it was a crazy time. And Aftermath was just being released. I had a friend whose family was being like stalked basically by the PIs, and she had come to stay with me. I didn't want to lose my mom. So there's all these paranoias that go on. So I did, school part-time. I've been working the whole time, and then I went into full-time. I was able to get my bachelor's degree from Cal State Long Beach in psychology, which I never envisioned as part of my journey, like having a degree. But in Scientology, sometimes as a kid, you don't want to talk up because you feel stupid because we didn't get public education and we don't know a lot of words. And I didn't ever want to talk about the world wars. And now that I have basic knowledge, it's so empowering, I gotta say, and I can't recommend it more. So then earlier this year, I got certified in peer support through the state of California, and I work at a crisis center. So we're dealing directly with the homeless population and people coming directly from crisis. I love it. For me, it's so nice to be in an environment where nobody's questioning mental health. Everyone is on the same page about getting people healthy, supporting them, and there's no agenda other than what's going to best empower the person in front of you. And it's so different than our past,
completely.
The three of our past, So that's my life now, mental health, dogs. We're launching this YouTube, and Elysia and I just reconnected 6 months ago. So that's why we decided to launch our channel.
Right.
It's such an empowering story. Like, congratulations.
Thank you.
Like, you have so clearly literally turned your life around. You've literally gone to the dark side, like in the world of psychology, like that. They are the enemy in Scientology. So the fact that you have you've done a complete U-turn in your mind and realized that, psychiatry isn't all bad. Yes, there are bits that are bad and things do get abused, but that happens in many different industries. That doesn't mean it's all bad, right? Mental health is a real thing. And the fact that you've not only like changed your mindset from the Scientology mindset, but then actually educated yourself, and now you're helping people at a crisis center. Like, you're helping more people with actual real science and mental health knowledge now than you ever would have in Scientology. And Scientology,
that's the crazy part about Scientology that I can't even, you guys get it, but Scientology and Scientologists, there's a lot in there with really good hearts. So like Scientology did create that in me, or however my mom raised me to feel about helping and wanting to do good, not like saving people. Like, I don't consider rescuing anyone. That's not cool. But just providing help was something so important to us. I learned how to give locationals early. I knew the assist pack. I used to do the Dianetic surf team and like give out like nervouses. So to us, that's such a like ingrained thing that I'm not mad at. It's just now I have effective ways to help people, and it was not before, and it drove me crazy.
Yeah, that's the thing that disappoints me the most, is that all of these people are genuinely good people, and they do genuinely want to help people.
Yeah.
It's just really, it upsets me that they think that this is the way to help people, because I was there. I used to think that. We all three of us did, right?
Yeah.
And now that we've gone through that journey and can realize that, you know, there are other ways to help people in much more effective and, you know, safe ways, it makes it even sadder for those who are still
it really does.
I really try and shout that message, and it does make me come across as a bit of an apologist, but I don't care, because I think there is so much focus on the abuses and horrible things that happen in Scientology. Absolutely, there's a place for that, and absolutely those stories need to be told. But the majority of people in Scientology are nice, good people. They have just been misinformed, right? And they have misunderstood things. And it's like, I kind of want people to realize that Scientologists in general are not horrible, weird, culty people, right? They've just unfortunately found themselves in this horrible situation.
Right.
But to back your point up, I also used to work at a field group, and I sold Dianetics books. I delivered OCA tests. I ruined people, right? And you can't see my fingers, but I'm doing air quotes. So I feel I'm not like Chris Shelton level where I was in the Sea Org, but there was a couple people who we convinced into Scientology. They're great people, and they're still there. So, like, to your point, like, what Scientology does is it handicaps people from helping, and they could be doing something real. They could be out there, like, doing, like, Elysia and I know, and I think this is what made us mad. We'd be out there doing actual dog rescue work, like on the ground, right? But then you'd have someone be like, well, I'm cool. I just sent my donation to the IAS. And that makes them feel like they're contributing, and they believe it, and they could be out there truly providing meals to someone, or, you know, comfort. It's just, it's not cool. And we feel the same way, and hopefully we can like humanize Scientologists too, because it's not cool. It's not, I know what you mean with the Xenu thing, because it's like, it's almost aggressive attacking, like, but it's not, because they don't know, but like, it's a trigger word when people are like, how's Xenu? I'm like, you just don't get it, you know?
Yeah, no, exactly. And you talking about the dog rescue there is, I think this is a good segue into Elysia's story, because do I remember rightly that you guys were friends in LA when you were kids, or you knew each other, and then you kind of went your separate ways, moved to different parts of the country, and then you've reconnected. And if I remember rightly from your video, there are some really weird similarities, like you're both doing dog rescue and stuff like this, that you've kind of ended up on the same path, even though you haven't had contact for years, right?
Yeah, 20 years.
20 years.
Talked, seen each other. I hadn't heard really much. So and then we reconnected, and then we were chatting, and it was just like, oh, you do that too? Oh, you do that too? I do that too. Oh, you do that? And it's really bizarre, because we were never that close growing up. Like, we knew each other. We were in similar circles, but we never hung out. We never slept over each other's house. We never were best friends. And now we're like super close, and it's so different. But I also think it's different because we're not trying to hide if we do or we don't like Scientology, if we're in or if we're not. I grew up and I was born into it, and I never liked it. Like, ever. I was always vehemently like against it, never was for it. I did very little because I kind of protested and fought against it my whole childhood. So I never even finished, I don't even think really a whole course. I was bribed into doing like the learning how to learn course. I wanted my ears pierced real bad in elementary school because I wanted to be normal. And that was how one of my parents bribed me into doing it. And so I started it, and I never finished it. But I can still my ears pierced, but I don't wear earrings hardly ever. But whatever.
I find it so interesting because, you know, in Scientology, there's such a focus on, I don't know if this trickled down to the public, but from a staff member's perspective, right, you can't force someone to do Scientology.
That's why I didn't get to do a lot. Like, because they wouldn't force me.
Yeah, if I was trying to like reg someone, like trying to sell someone a course, right, which wasn't my main job, but it's of course something I did. I remember trying to get someone in and they didn't have much money, and I was like, well, I'll just pay for it. Like, you clearly want to do it, and it's £30, not very expensive life improvement course. Like, you just owe me the money or whatever. But the church were like, no, you cannot do that, because they have to want it. They have to find the money. Because otherwise it won't work on them. So I find stories like yours, Elysia, really interesting, that you very clearly didn't want to do it, but they were still forcing it on you, which is kind of not really.
That is the prison of the mind, is when you choose, because I chose personally, right? Like I was like, this is gonna make me do this, and then you're really there. And so Elysia was smart.
I was just a real big troublemaker as a kid. I mean, I'm one of 4. I just was never about it. I always thought it felt weird. I always thought it was I just thought it was weird, right? And I went to public school most of my schooling, and so I really just tried to stay in the public friends, public school. I mean, of course, we had family friends that were Scientologists. Of course, we went to the events that I hated. Of course, sometimes we'd have babysitters or go get dropped off at some of the daycares that were just horrendous. Like, I have no good memories of those places, just kids running wild. No one really supervising them, and just 1 or 2 adults with kids just running amok in someone's house. And I have kids now, and I'm just kind of baffled at how little interaction and concern there were for, young kids. So that's that's
because there's no such thing as children.
We're all
spiritual, immortal beings.
We are, and we just need to recall it, and we would know how to do anything.
Yeah.
Just whatever, recall it, boy. Just get it. You can do it. Just recall it. And so it's a very strange way to grow up, because on one hand, like, your parents give you like a lot of freedom, and so you're like, yeah, I can do this, I can do that. And
which is empowering as like a teenager, right? And you kind of got that feistiness, and you kind of, this is what got me in, because when I was a teenager,
you liked it.
That's when I was like, they're giving me a job, like they're giving me responsibility, they're telling me I can do what I want and be who I want to be. I'm like, this is great, because that's what you want as a teenager.
Right? But then it backfires, because when I was a teenager, I was like, not the easiest. But I mean, it's also like, that's how we were brought up, is like, we're in control of our own stuff, do it, whatever. And so it just was there was no structure. I think if there was a bit of structure, a little bit of structure and some guidance, and like, hey, maybe let's not do XYZ because that's just not safe or whatever. But it was a very different way to grow up. Some stuff was really fun. And some stuff was a little reckless. I mean, now as an adult, I'm like, probably shouldn't have done that. But as a kid, I thought it was a lot of it was kind of fun. We had a lot of freedoms that other kids probably didn't in that way. But we also had different stuff that we were like expected to do or keep up with or learn, like Scientology stuff and like doing OW write-ups. Like, who wants to do that as a kid? Like, I'm sorry, no. And I really didn't like those. And that was something that was starting to be enforced by my parents. And I hated it. And so I thought, well, maybe I can just be a little bit of a cheeky shit, right? Like, I'll put something on there that'll like make my parents think like, oh, don't ask her again, it's going to be something bad. So I literally like put on there how I stole my dad's money, like somebody out of his wallet to buy some snacks at school. I thought, well, whatever, you're going to make me do this. I'm going to tell you what you want to hear. Like, I'm going to tell you all of it. So it didn't stop. It didn't help. I mean, I thought maybe, but it was not the most fun in that aspect, because I did not like writing each other up. Like, and that was always a very strange thing for me, because I'm like, no, you want siblings to be close, not to be tattletaling and ratting on each other. Like, you're supposed to be a little crew, like, so I didn't like that part. But
that, like, it's framed in your mind as like, you're not ratting on them, you're helping them, right?
I never thought that. I thought that was like, you're being a little dirty snitch. And again, I grew up in LA and in the public. And so most of my normal friends would be like, no, you don't tattletale. And I would be like, no, you don't tattletale. So I didn't think that.
Did your siblings go to the same public school, or did they go to Scientology school? Because I wonder why you had a different experience. Like, is it just that's the way you are, or is it because of a different...
Get this. Tell them about Delphi.
Okay.
I was going to ask if you guys went to Delphi.
So like the 8th grade, I didn't get to go to school. I thought I was, but I didn't. So I woke up ready to go to school, pumped up. It was going to be a great year. I had my closest in age sibling would have been going to 7th grade, and I would have been 8th grade. So I was really excited. I'm super overprotective. Probably has something to do with the Scientology upbringing. But I was really excited because I'm like, oh, he gets to be at my school. I can keep an eye. I can make sure everything's good. Plans derailed. I was forcibly taken to Mojave Academy, which is like one of the boarding schools. It's not really school, but it's in the middle of the desert. There's nothing really around it. So we drove for like maybe 2 hours, I think it was. And I got dropped off there, and I was expected just to stay and do school there. During that year, my youngest brothers went to Delphi. So they started going. My mom was a teacher that was not no credentials teacher. I really like that to be a point that people understand. Yeah. You don't have to be any kind of
they don't even do a background check.
No.
Yeah.
Which is so wild.
Insane. Is that illegal in the US? Do you know, or is it like a loophole in the US law?
It's not,
or is
though. It's
not.
Because it's a private. You're allowed to do whatever you want.
Exactly.
In like a religious private.
Yeah, they kind of use these little loopholes for their benefit. So I went to Mojave Academy, which was pretty much my most like thrown into experience into Scientology world, because we were doing clay demos, which I didn't like to do. So I got to play with clay, which I hated, and I didn't do it very often. I would sit in my trailer, because that's where we lived, was in double wide trailers with bunk beds. It was real classy, you know. We kept it real classy. And so I would hang out in my dorm by myself, trailer by myself. And I was in trouble for everything. If I breathed, I was in trouble. If I talked I was the only girl at the, there's 2 campuses or 2 locations, and I was at the first one that they called the farm. When I was there, you're supposed to be doing life basics. So you do clay demos of every single way to happiness thing. It's like 50 something of them. Once you do all those to a pass, you can move up to the main house and do education.
Is this the place that's, I think I've seen in a documentary or something, that's marketed kind of like a summer camp that's meant to be really fun and cool?
I think one of them.
There's a few. Yeah, there's a few. There were a few. I think there's a few still out there.
Elysia found an old promo video that I think maybe you're referring to. She sent it to Ian, and then he played it on his channel. So it probably is what you're talking about.
It could be that.
Yeah. So it's that, because I found that and I was like, this is bizarre, but yeah, it's a very strange place. But we were in trouble. All the kids were in trouble, but I was in trouble because I was a girl. I had breasts. I've never had so much issues with having breasts. I mean, Jesus, at 14, I was in trouble because the boys talked to me. If I sat next to them on the car, if they wanted to sit next to anything, I was in trouble. And I was the only girl there. So it was kind of hard to not be in trouble, because I was the only girl that was there. So I'd be like, okay, I'm just going to go sit in my dorm and not do anything. So I was kind of not being part of the group because I chose not to, because they were trying not to force me, right? Because it's my decision. So I would just hang out there, and I just did nothing. It was a waste of time, a waste of money. I want to say it was probably over $1,000 a month for the tuition, and I didn't learn anything. I got further and further behind. So that was a really strange time for me, because it was very isolated. I thought about running away, but there's not much there. So I'd be like running to a highway, but it's just truckers. There's no one really coming or going. And I thought, that might not be a better outcome. Ended up I don't even know where. So I decided against it. But I met a few people there that I've recently reconnected with, which is really cool to know that they're, out and, in the world, in the real world. And I know there wasn't a lot of information. When I was kind of coming out and looking to see and to get some realities like understood and like just some clarity on some stuff, I didn't find much about it. And so that's kind of one of the things that drove me into looking, researching, and then I found a video, like a really old VHS tape. So I had to go have it like downloaded onto another thing to be able to watch it, because who has a VCR player?
Elysia, can I tell him what really upsets me about this is that she started taking care of a child during that time. So not only was she in trouble for having babies because you're told that you're like 2D flowing, basically, just for being a female, which is really shameful and shitty as adults.
Because you as a spiritual being have decided to choose this body that has breasts.
Right.
What a DB.
I'm developed. I am a DB.
Why why on earth would you do something so stupid?
I mean,
that's nothing to do with the men.
No,
yeah,
you know, I mean, come on now.
That's the hard part, because it's almost encouraged, because when we did TRs there and bull baiting, I'm the only girl. So all the boys wanted to do it with me, because then they could pretend to grope me. Then they could pretend to like touch me. And I don't want to say too much because I don't want to get in trouble on YouTube, but they would pretend to do all kinds of very not appropriate things to my womanly parts, my girl parts. And the teacher and I would be like, I will kick your ass. And I would threaten the boys all the time, because I didn't care. I really would. I was like, listen, I have 3 brothers. I don't care. We can go outside in this dirt and throw down. I'm cool.
You've had to be tough for so long.
And I always told him, like, I will mess you up. And my teacher would be like, you got her to break. Good job. And I'm like, you're raising these boys to think that there's no such thing as consent. There's no such thing as boundaries. You don't need to ask. You don't need to have any appropriate kind of language or body language, nothing. Like, it was totally encouraged.
Persistence is key, right? We used to say that all the time in Scientology London, like, persistence is key. If you just keep hounding at this person, they will eventually buy the book, which sounds kind of annoying as a marketing sales tool, but this mindset goes right down to this sort of thing, and it's disgusting.
Push. Yeah,
and eventually you'll cave in. But that doesn't mean you consent.
Right. No. And so,
that's not consent.
Right. That's not at all. And that's, I think, what so many of these young kids were being raised. And like, as an adult now, I'm so sad to think that I don't know how they grew up to be, because they're in this environment when they're going through their prepubescent times. Because I was 14, and I think I was at that time probably one of the oldest kids at that particular location. The other location had some older kids and kids around my age. But they were younger, and they were going through some rough stuff, and no one was really telling them it's not appropriate to do that. So I would just get back on them on my own terms. I started making morning smoothies because we had to exercise hardcore, like boot camp style in the morning. So we had to be in our van, leaving by 7 to get over to the other place by 7:15. We would do military style by an ex-military guy, an older military Marine guy. He would yell at us to do all these exercises. So we'd exercise for an hour, and then you would eat. So you're up until from 6:30. I used to get up at 6 because I made the smoothies too, and I would get ready. So you'd be up for 2 hours with no real food, doing hardcore exercise, and then we'd run in formation, just miles, 1 to 2 miles on a day regularly, and sometimes 3, 4, sometimes 5. So you'd be doing hardcore exercises, and so I had been complaining, and our teacher was they somehow figured out that they could get some frozen strawberries, frozen bananas, almond milk, I think, and ice in a blender. So I could get us an early breakfast. So I was able to do that for everybody. So when the boys would be little shits, I would not give them any. Oops, sorry, I ran out. Sucks to suck, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And so I tell them, don't do that again, or you're not going to get any. And they would actually listen, which is the funnier part. They weren't bad. They were just being encouraged to be rowdier than what they should be. And they were allowed to get away with it. And that's the sad part, is that you had a plethora of kids out there with very little interaction with healthy adults, I'll say. You had a kid, I had a kid that when he started, he was dumped off and he was just crying and he was just suicidal. He was walking around talking about he wanted to die. And I'm like, he's 9. And I'm like, okay. So then I took him under my wing and I was like, you sit next to me on the bus. If the boys give you shit in the dorm, you have to tell me, because I'm not in the boys' dorm, so I don't know. And I'd always tell all the boys, if anybody's messing with, I'm just going to say his name because I don't know his last name. If anybody's messing with Evan, I said, you're not going to get a morning smoothie. And when we go outside to play, I'll kick your ass. And I also was a skateboarder. So I was like, I'll bust your skateboard up. I'll break it, whatever. And it'll be an accident. Oops. So they,
Elysia, the fact that you've had to be a maternal figure for so long is really what upsets me, because you're making the smoothies for the kids at 14 or whatever. And then what I really wanted you to tell them is that when you came back from Mojave, so I used to see her walking around with a child and I thought she had a baby because we didn't talk all the time. So while I
disappeared for 8 months and
at Mojave. So while I'm getting an education, at Delphi, going to school with other kids our age, and including her brother, she was not getting an education. She was babysitting. a child, a baby of a teacher at Delphi, an unqualified teacher, just some woman who just happened to work there. And I would see Elysia walking around with a baby for like a year at least.
Something around that.
Yeah. And to me, like, okay, so Elysia has this whole thing like, well, I didn't do that many courses. Look at how affected your entire life has been because of this. It's just mind-boggling. You don't even have to know the tech word for word. Your entire life was started as like having to be a mom to these children, and like you didn't even get to go to high school. Like, what the hell? Like
that was normal though. That was very normal in our Scientology world. So when I came back, there was no plans. I didn't get re-enrolled in regular school. So I just hung out at Delphi because my mom was working there. The other teacher in her classroom had an infant son who was maybe 2 or 3 months. And he was just in a pack and play in the classroom. And they were teaching little kids, like 5-year-olds, like little ones. So obviously 5-year-olds and then a little baby is going to be not really working out. So I ended up babysitting him. And so I just walk around Delphi and I'd walk around La Cañada, like the whole, like just up and down the streets. Because if he was crying or teething, I couldn't be on campus because kids were learning and getting an education. So I'd have to leave, like go walk down the street. You know, I could walk and get like a sandwich, or I can go walk and get his mom like a little pastry or a little muffin or whatever across the street. So I'd just be walking around and I'd have to kind of time out the lunches because that's when we could kind of come back and change diapers and I could feed him and burp him and get all his supplies.
Were you taught any of this, or were you just like figuring it out? Because you're how old are you? Like 14, 15 at this point?
15. I'm 15, yeah. 14,
so
15,
like,
yeah.
14.
You have no qualifications in childcare. You have no experience. Like you have just found yourself having to look after this child.
Yeah.
Which
I mean, I babysat before, but not.
But that's
like,
different to like basically being a maternal figure to someone. Like, isn't that mad that can be allowed to happen?
Oh, for sure. For sure.
Right?
I didn't have any schooling in 8th grade. I mean, I learned stuff, right? I learned how to change diapers, how to make a bottle. I learned how to take care of a baby. I learned if he was about to cry, I need to get out of there and how much time I would have to move before he would really lose his stuff. Teething was really hard because, you know, they're just fussy and cranky. And so I just have to walk him all around La Cañada, and I would get the dirtiest looks from people because at 14, I looked younger than 14. And he looked like he was my kid. I mean, he passed for my kid all the time. And people would just give me the dirtiest looks. And I'd always be like, I think you'd be given different looks if you knew what was really going on. I'm just not in school. It's not my kid. This is just Scientology normalcy, I guess, in their world, because you don't really need education. I don't know. And maybe because I refused to do like stuff in Mojave, they didn't want to spend more money. I don't really know. But yeah,
you were just like a lost cause at that point.
Probably. And I probably was. It's probably just like, well, maybe if she doesn't get an education, she'll fall into Scientology because she'll have to work there or end up working for Scientologists. Because I babysat that kid until he was a little over a year old. Like I had him for a while. And then I babysat another random Scientologist kid, like their newborn. I was like at their house being a nanny for a little bit. And I was like, what is this? Like, I'm supposed to be in school. So, I mean, it's a very strange world. So, yeah, I did that. And then I had to kind of fight to get back into school. Very fast, very, because you can't be a kid because you're busy taking care of other kids. And it's hard. You know, you got to think about these littler kids who are probably going through it quicker than I even was. And that's how I thought of it. Like, it's probably even tougher for them than it is for me. Because I at least got elementary school, and that was some amount of education. And so it is very weird because you do make reasons for the stuff that you're raised in because it doesn't make sense, but you try to make it make some bit of sense. And so it was just a weird time. But yeah, I had to kind of fight to get back into high school. I started late in 9th grade, but I did start. And it was kind of weird because I was just gone for like a year and a half and just randomly reappeared. And I kind of figured people would think I had a kid because people had seen me walking around even over the summer. I was babysitting the same kid and he would just get dropped off at my house. So I did just be walking around my house. Did you have to go around
and like try and convince everyone it's not my kid?
No.
It's not my kid.
No, I didn't care. At that point, I was so embarrassed that I just thought, whatever. They can make up whatever things they want to. I mean, to
Just
me,
keep your head down, right?
Being in trouble for being 2D so much in Scientology, I already was like, that's what they think. That's what everybody thinks, because that's how it was portrayed. You know, in Mojave, everything was out 2D, and you're being promiscuous for talking to a boy. And I was like, I'm talking to a boy. That's not the definition. Got in a little spat with the, I think, ethics officer there. And I was like, that's not the definition. And I am not being promiscuous for talking to a boy. That's absurd. And she didn't like it. And I didn't like her. And I still don't like her. So, you know, I showed her the definition. And she was like really trying to go back for it. I was like, look it up in the dictionary. And she did. And she was reading all the definitions. I'm like, none of those are anything that's happening. Talking to someone has nothing to do with promiscuous. Like it's no correlation.
I spent over a month on the precept, don't be promiscuous, on my happiness rundown.
Yes, because that's what they kind of made it back to.
Oh no, they make you go into past lifetimes. You've had to and if you've ever dated anyone, I guess that's like promiscuity. It's pretty nuts.
It's so weird. Yeah. Which is funny because they are so over sexualizing girls, but not caring what boys do, which is a really slippery slope in general. And it really has I think makes a entitled mind for a lot of these young boys, which is not safe or good. And that's really scary because you have to wonder what happens to these kids growing up into adults. If they stay in these environments, they're thinking that's okay. And it's totally not.
That's what we see, with the Danny Masterson trial.
I was going to say, I didn't want to, yeah.
He's like, you know, obviously we're still waiting on the verdict, but like, I think we're probably all on the same page as to what we think happened. And
anyone who read the letter from her mother, from Jane Doe's mom, and like we have family ties to her too. So like that, anybody who's read that letter about how he treated her or how we're on the same page.
And I think it's one of those hard things that's hard to explain to a non-Scientologist, right?
It is,
because it's just the way Scientology is that it allows these things to happen. It's not like it's a policy or people are raised in a certain, it's just the way that it is, right? That these things happen because that's the way people's minds work. And I don't know if you guys had experience of this, but in the UK, in London particularly, right, girls would turn on their flirt, right, when it came to public facing stuff, right?
If someone it's called flirty fishing in cults. Like it's normal. Like the Hare Krishnas made that a thing. Yeah. But that's how my dad got in. He got in by a flirty female.
Pretty girl.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. Like they don't train you, they don't teach you, right? They don't say to you, so that you've got to flirt a bit to get them in. Like it's just you just end up doing it, right? You just if you have someone in front of you that you think is going to be interested in Scientology, or they've walked into the building already, you're like, cool, well that's great because that doesn't happen very often. And then you're like, okay, cool. So anything you can do to get them to stay or to buy the book, you will, and you try every little trick in the book, from being flirty to being intelligent and asking questions, like everything you possibly can until you find what makes that person tick.
Whatever it is their interest is, you just go and hone in on it. I've seen a lot of people do that, and that's also a way that I think parents our parents have used stuff against us. They know things that we like and that are important, and they try to minimize it or maximize it depending on what they need to do. Like for us, certain things about Scientology were not cool. We were not okay with. Certain actual written down stuff about people being degraded, about them not being okay with people's sexuality, because you can't be gay in Scientology, which has always been something that I've been like, that's stupid, and I don't stand for that. And I've always said that even as a teenager, and so I was always like, that's not okay. And I'd be like, I'm gay. I'd always tell my parents, well, I'm gay. What are you gonna do? Like, what are you gonna do? And they would never have anything to say. They'd be like, And I'd be like, okay, so like you're gonna dump me off, or you're gonna go like send me some rehab place that's gonna get it out of me? Like that's not how it works. So again, I was very rebellious, and so I was probably a little louder about my frustrations than most people were. Most people would just be like, I don't like it, but just do it to the bare minimum, and then you get whatever you want out of your parents, and you can kind of grow up and get away from it and not have to do it if you don't want to. But I was very much not in, like, I was just not okay with that. And it didn't sit well with me. And then seeing stuff up close, like at Mojave, like, this is your stuff in practice. Like, it's horrible. Horrible things were happening. And so, yeah, seeing all that is hard to comprehend and hard to make excuses for. And so after that, I was very detached from the idea of having parents. I mean, they were my parents, but they were not caretakers in any way that I found would be normal, you know.
Because in Scientology, like, the whole principle of family, like, I never quite understood this, right? There's a real focus on family in terms of, like, the second dynamic, right? Having a family, like, there is a focus on family, but at the same time, family doesn't mean anything, because you might be my son or daughter this life, but you weren't last life, and you won't be the next one. So, like, family doesn't really mean anything. So
and I realized that there's so many contradictory references, and the way that they gaslight you when you're,
they use them whenever they need to.
Yeah, they pull out the one they want for the time.
Yeah. That's what I always felt like. Yeah. There's so many contradictions.
Yeah.
And you do that yourself as well. Like, I don't know if you guys particularly did, but, like, I remember, right, trying to get away with something, you know, sending a book in a certain way, or doing something that I knew was kind of a bit naughty or whatever. Like, I'll try and get away. And I know that it was not necessarily off policy, but, like, I would think in my mind, okay, well, how can I get away with doing this? Okay, well, I'll show them this policy, because I know that one says the opposite thing to that one. So,
which is just teaching people how to be manipulative, right?
Yeah,
like, you're just manipulating stuff, which is,
and you don't realize it at the time. Like, I talked about it before with the emotional manipulation, right? Like, the idea of the tone scale, and if someone is upset or angry or expressing any sort of emotion, right? You suddenly instinctively, I instinctively just tried to raise them up on the tone scale, right? Because I think I'm not really listening to what they've got to say, because we're not going to resolve this until they're thinking rationally. So my job is to raise you up on the tone scale, then we can think about it rationally, and then we can talk about it and resolve the issue. But we're not going to resolve the issue until you come up on the tone scale. But that's how I thought about it in my head.
Because you think you're actually good control. You're taught good control and bad control, and you're doing what you're supposed to, but you're not communicating and you're not listening. You're manipulating.
Yeah, exactly it. When you realize, actually, what I'm doing here is manipulating the person in front of me, and I've done it for years and did it like every day. Then you suddenly realize.
Then there's a lot of guilt too for you, right? Because you're not a bad person and you wouldn't have done that on your own, but you were kind of taught to do that. And then you were like, oh yeah, you got a good sale. Oh yeah, you have good stats. Oh yeah, you're upstat, like whatever praise it was. And then you're like, I guess I can keep doing that because they're saying it's good and my numbers are good or my statistics are good. It's literally making people be so, like, just turn them into monsters in little ways, you know, like whether it's the bull baiting, the TRs, the girls can't have any kind of bodies.
No, if you follow everything, you're going to turn into a sociopath. Like, learning about what that means, like a sociopath, and then learning the literally being like, oh my God, in my head, like, there's this L. Ron Hubbard reference telling me about 8C and good control, and all the times I had to walk someone to the wall and make them move, and it's exactly out of the playbook for persuasion, manipulation. It's just shocking, and you have to make a choice. Like, Alex, you made the choice to not manipulate people anymore, because it becomes second nature as a Scientologist, especially when you're raised in it. And it's a challenge. But once you realize what you're doing, then you completely change. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you find it interesting, Vanessa, like, with your education in the world of, like, the actual world of mental health and the way the mind actually works, did you find, you know, Chris Shelton has said the same thing, he found it interesting that, like, when you realize L. Ron Hubbard just took lots of little bits from lots of different places, nothing is really original. And for me, for example, I'm not trained like you are in mental health, but for me, I found it quite hard to, like, figure out in my head what is true, what I believe in, what's me, and what's Scientology me, because a lot of Scientology is based on actual real practices and beliefs and research and stuff, but Ron Hubbard has manipulated it or twisted it or reinterpreted it. So like, when you go down to, like, the example, like, man is basically good, right? Like, you know, there's nothing wrong with that as a belief. but it's how you then apply it as they do in Scientology that makes it harmful. Like, how's that been for you, Vanessa? Like,
so it has been extremely exhausting having to rethink every thought I've ever had, and I immediately have, because I literally hear either my mom or L. Ron Hubbard with a quote in my head, and it starts happening. But when I was getting my education, there's like, it's so ingrained in you. So going through all of learning all this incredible stuff, first thing I did was look in the back in the research log to see if there had been any mention of Hubbard in every book I had. No mention. No, he was nothing. He did no real research. So the first thing I learned was about the scientific method, and we have to do a lot of research as psych students. So my respect for anyone who's actually a scientist is very high. It's super hard to have peer-supported research that you go out of your way to control all these things. He did not do anything like that. So first of all his theories are nothing, because there's like, it's literally just his self-help ideas, right? But there were so many layers, Alex. So like going through it, I made sure to choose, because Scientology is a philosophical religion, I took Psych 101 alongside Philosophy 101. And those are actually pretty contradictory classes, because science or philosophy, right? So I have this whole time ingrained philosophy into my beliefs, and I have had to question everything. I mean, there was even learning about utilitarianism, which is actually a pretty basic concept. It's like the greatest good for the greatest number of dynamics, okay? And that's something that kind of makes sense to us in our head. Well, when you go to a philosophy class and then you are arguing both sides to people, like that's just part of class, right? And I can argue that utilitarianism doesn't work for everybody because it leaves out the minority. And I actually have an example now of why. And clearly, like, maybe we're the minority or maybe we're not, but it doesn't work for everybody. But I was able to like, oh, that thing, like throw that out, because that was just his, and mostly he's honestly taken a lot of really good stuff and perverted it like really badly to make it not helpful, and it just sucks. Like,
isn't it interesting? Like, I'm gonna really oversimplify it here, but like when you break it down, all you did here, right, in those examples you just gave me, that completely like allowed you to unpick it and realize that, what Scientology actually is. All you've really done is started actually thinking, right? It's really simple, right? You were researching, you were asking yourself what you think about this. You're looking at two sides of the argument, which is natural and normal for most people, right, in the world. But in Scientology, that process doesn't happen, right? That you aren't supposed to look at other books about the mind or mental health or whatever. Like, if you want to learn about people, the way they operate, why they operate the way they do, and why someone's behaving in a certain way, you don't even question, you don't even think to look at another book, because LRH has the answers, right? And just the fact that you started thinking and going, maybe there are other opinions out there, like that's the thing that starts unwrapping it all,
the little light bulb, right?
Right, for sure.
Which is so simple but so hard.
It takes a lot of work to really rethink these thoughts, like we've all three been through, and we can empathize with anyone doing it, because there's also like, I mean, Elysia and I like to talk about the patriarchy in Scientology, and so we've had like, I had to take 3 different women's and gender studies courses to actually see all of the things he said over time that were so incredibly putting women down. But I didn't have that education before. So I was just like the rest of the Scientology women who were like, yeah, feminism sucks. It's just so weird. But like, it takes work. It's not fun. Like, you have to, like, I had to go to campus and sit and do all this. But for me, it was like maybe the safest and best way to unload this brain. Because I've seen a lot of people kill themselves after coming out because they cannot understand what the hell is going on. They can't communicate. They just know that maybe they just fucked up by talking out or something. And it's really, really sad, but it's a going to school or finding your local community college. Like, I can't recommend it enough as a recovery tool. Yeah.
It's because it really goes down to the fundamentals of the way we think. This is what I think people don't understand about Scientology who haven't had an experience, right? They think that it's something you believe, like it's like another religion. No, it's not actually, in my opinion, necessarily the doing of the Scientology or whatever. Like, they do, there are negative impacts, of course, but like actually the long-term effects is it challenges and changes the fundamental way you think about stuff, the way you process things. And that is what's hardest to overcome, because you don't have the ability to question yourself at the beginning, because you've never done that before. It's been literally and so when someone comes up to you and says, how do you feel about that? Like I mentioned earlier with watching the Xena thing, I was like, I didn't, what is a feeling? I don't know. How do I identify what I'm feeling? Right.
I know.
And it's this is how like deep it goes and why it has such a big impact.
I have a feelings chart I keep on my desk because I don't know those words. Like it's hard to be like, it's not the tone scale. Those are the only ones I know that by heart. I have an actual feelings chart where I'm like, I'm feeling unsettled. And like, it's okay to say that, right? Like that's
such a good idea.
If we can't express emotions, and this is a very general psych thing I learned super on, we do not express emotions, which we were not taught to and we did not do, we would be shamed, right, for being Banky or Casey or whatever, no case on post. If we don't express it, we're gonna like physically get sick. Like stress in our body will cause us to not be okay. So like, it's no surprise. Like it's not losses on the 2D, buddy. It's just stress, and everyone like knows what stress comes from. So if we can try to start expressing ourselves using our words, it's actually really good and it's not bad.
Right. Yeah. The most basic things are just so foreign to us. It's just so sad.
Yeah.
And I love that you guys have decided to come on YouTube and share your stories, because again, we mentioned it before, like sharing your stories helps people, but actually I think you both have a really unique, interesting something to bring to the table that other people don't, right? Firstly, the more people that speak out about Scientology on YouTube, the better, because they're already overwhelmed with stuff to look at and read and watch and so on. So actually, the more people that do it, the safer it becomes to talk out, because there's not enough Scientologists to actually fair game everyone if everyone starts speaking out. But there's also that, like, every person that starts a YouTube channel or starts writing a blog or whatever format you do it in, you're bringing a different perspective and a different story, right? When I started speaking out, I was, as far as I'm aware, the only UK staff member. There have been a couple that have spoken out, and shared their stories, but I'm pretty sure I'm the first, if not the only person from the UK to, like, John Atack was a public, right? So he was very prolific and he has a big impact on the industry. But like, so just the fact that I'm doing it means that my story is going to be relating to people that, and with yourselves, there are other people that share their experiences of being public, but no one has the experience of being a public and going and educating yourself in the way the mind actually works. Or Elysia, your experience of kind of not really buying into Scientology and it's still affecting you. Like you bring something to the table that other people don't have. And I love that you guys are here, and it's welcome to the crew, I suppose.
Thank you so much.
We're so proud of you.
Yeah, everybody has these unique and awesome perspectives and channels. I'm like, we're supporting them all. We're happy you're here too. Like, there's so many voices. Of course, everyone's going to be different. And of course, everyone's going to have a different experience and perspective. So like, we're supporting you, and thank you for having us on and like asking us such great questions.
Right. Yeah, this is so much fun.
I learned so much from, like, every conversation I have with another former Scientologist, even if it's someone that I've never spoken to before,
Right.
never met,
Yeah.
like, there's one thing that there's the trauma bonding that you click with, but there's also like that in Scientology, there's very much like a gang mentality of like, we look after our own. And I feel like there's still an element of that now we're out of Scientology, but in a really positive way. Like,
in a good way.
We've had similar experiences, but on the other side of the world, and so many things are so different, but so many things are so same. Like, we just get each other in a way that other people don't. And I love that. Like, and I just learned so much from every person I speak to and interview on my channel. So thank you for
we've all had to find our way out of the wormhole. So like, here's this little tip, here's this little one. Oh, I didn't know that. And it's really cool. And thankfully we have this community out here.
Right. Yeah. So nice.
What's the plan for your channel? So your channel is Degraded Daughters of Dianetics, right?
Yes.
What's the plan with the channel? Like, what next? Because I know you've only just started in the last, couple of weeks? It must be 2 weeks or something.
Not even a week, not even a month. In 6 days, it'll be 1 month.
Right.
Yeah.
So have you got a plan, a strategy? Like, have you got a list of things you want to talk about, or are you just kind of every week going, let's record something, let's see where we end up, kind of like what we did today?
It's a little of both. We like you find the organic conversations just more like Elysia and I cannot after a life in a cult, we can't not be real. Like, it makes us physically ill to like try to be fake. So like you were like, let's just have a quick conversation. It'll be fine. We do definitely like, I've kept incredible notes over the last 7 years of like, oh, this L. Ron Hubbard reference is directly involved in this research experiment. I can make a correlation. So I want to talk about a lot of stuff like that as from the psych viewpoint. And then also, we both love dogs. We both love makeup. We both love beauty. We want to give a platform to people who we know who want to speak out just like you, if they want. And like, Elysia, what do you think?
Same. Just sharing some stories, kind of normalizing our lives, I think.
Yeah.
We've kind of carried around a lot of baggage from our upbringing that sometimes is normal to us, but then you say it to somebody else and they're like, oh God, like that's like, you know, and you're like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have said that. So we're just trying to make sure that people feel like their voices are heard, their stories are validated. Mental health is really big for both of us. And we want to make sure that even though we know so many in our community or exes might not get therapy or any kind of that, even if they can watch a video and get a few tips from Vanessa and me and hers like conversations, even that's helpful. Yeah. So any which way that we can help soften the blow of leaving this or getting out of this or decoupling your thoughts, any way that we can help, we're just happy to be here. And we were talking every morning anyway. And Vanessa's like, why don't we just do this? And I was like, no one gives a shit. And then she was like, yeah, they will. And I was like, okay. So I've just been, hanging out, talking, chatting, and sharing tips. And hopefully that people have resonated really well so far with us. And we didn't do a lot of promotion. I was a little too chicken shit.
I think you just popped up on my home screen.
This is our first interview.
Yeah.
Is this your first? No way.
Yeah, you're our first, Alex.
I feel honored.
Yeah. You're our first interviewer.
Thanks for having us, Alex.
Right.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity. I really, that's awesome. That's so nice. I think I just you just popped up on my YouTube homepage one day and I was like, who are these guys? I've not seen them before. And you had like 10 views or something. And I was like, wait, is this a new channel? And then you didn't have any other videos. And I was like, okay, I'm going to watch this. And it's like, I don't know how I just came across it, but
yeah, we definitely had to make the YouTube and get all the channel, like everything with the name before we launched, because we were worried that our name wouldn't be available. So we had to do all that first before we're
honestly having fun watching it grow organically. Like, we're responding to all the comments and we really appreciate them and stuff. So like, we don't have a big goal of, like taking over. We're just trying to do us, grow organically, like be there for people if they're around. Scientology, for whatever reason, you might resonate with this, Alex, creates pretty goth people with like the whole concept of like dropping bodies and stuff. So I really live my life.
It's so true.
It really does. I live my life with the end in mind. And there's certain things that I wanted to have out there that I don't die with. So that's our plan. We're getting it off our chest.
Right. And we have little dark humor that I hope people get. I feel like some people might not, and that's okay. But we've been trying to take terms that have been used against us and rebrand it and just be like, you're not going to use it against us. Simple as our name. You want to
finding comedy,
we're
comedy in the darkness.
Right. Yeah. Right.
It is so important to like find not to laugh about the abuses, but to find the comedic value in like, how on earth did I believe in that, right? Or how on earth did I think that was the right thing to do? Like, that's just what, like, it's funny, right?
Yeah.
And it's the only thing you can do is laugh.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you end up in a really miserable, horrible
For sure.
Place, we're hoping to add a little bit of humor to people's, because it's a lot. Yeah. And we don't want people struggling alone. I mean, come struggle and look at stupid memes with us. Cool.
I love it. Well, you guys are doing great, and thank you for giving me the opportunity. Anyone watching this, go and subscribe. I'll put the link in the description down below. Degraded Daughters of Dianetics. Vanessa, Elysia, thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Alex.